Think you've been with someone for years. You trust him. You believe in him. Then suddenly, a small doubt sneaks in. Something doesn't sit right. His words don't quite match what he does. His late-night excuses begin to sound too perfect, and then he says 6 words that instantly make your heart drop. Could this be a hint that he's being unfaithful? Let's take a deeper look and uncover what these signs might really mean. Words shape our world. They're more than just noises. They're clues. They show what someone really means. They reveal patterns, and most importantly, they can expose lies. When a man is cheating, he usually reveals it, not by admitting it outright, but in the little things he says, the slight changes in how he speaks, and the carefully chosen phrases that sound innocent at first but hide something more when you pay closer attention. Language isn't just about sharing information. It can be used to influence, to steer, to control how we're seen. A man who's being unfaithful doesn't want to get caught. But he also doesn't want to tell a bold lie because that would make him feel guilty. So, instead, he chooses his words carefully, just enough to leave you confused, just enough to make you doubt yourself instead of doubting him. That's how cheating usually shows up, not in obvious lies, but in the slow fading of clarity. It starts with him being vague. You ask where he was last night, and instead of saying, "I was at the office finishing up a report," he says something like, "You know how things have been at work lately." It sounds like he's answering you, but he's not. It's a way to avoid being specific, a trick to move the conversation away from the truth. That's on purpose. That's a tactic. An honest man has no reason to be unclear. He has nothing to hide, so he speaks directly. But someone who's lying needs space between himself and the truth. And the simplest way to create that space is with empty words. Then comes the defensiveness. If you mention something that doesn't quite line up, he doesn't just explain. He gets annoyed. He flips the situation around. He makes you feel like you're the problem. "Why do you always have to doubt me?" Or, "Can't you just trust me?" These aren't real answers. They're barriers. They're used to make you feel guilty for even asking the question. And if you feel guilty, you're more likely to let it go. That's what he wants. But sometimes it goes even deeper. Sometimes he'll say things that sound comforting. "You know I'd never do that." Or, "I love you, you don't need to worry." And sure, that sounds sweet, right? But here's the thing. A man who has nothing to hide doesn't need to calm your fears in advance. A loyal man shows his honesty through his actions. He doesn't need to prove it with words. A man who's hiding something, though, knows that eventually the truth might come out. So he starts working early, planting seeds of doubt in your mind before you ever start asking questions. He builds a defense before there's even an attack. Then there's a change in how he talks. A man keeping secrets starts using distant words. Instead of saying, "I had dinner with Mark and Jason," he says, "Yeah, I grabbed a bite with some guys." It might not sound like much, but there's a difference. The first version is detailed. It's exact. You can hold him accountable to it. The second is vague, flexible. It gives him room to twist the story later if needed. He can change little parts without obviously lying. That's not an accident. That's planning. When the lies start piling up, that's when things begin to fall apart. He can't always remember which version of the story he told you. He seems irritated when you ask the same question again. The timelines don't match. But even when things clearly don't make sense, he won't admit to anything. Instead, he'll say, "I already told you this," or "We've had this talk before, you just don't remember." That's called gaslighting. Gaslighting is a mind game. It's designed to mess with how you see reality. When a man is cheating, his words start shifting before his actions give him away. The changes are subtle, being vague, overly defensive, giving long, unnecessary explanations, or making statements that later don't line up. These are signs of lying. And the trick to noticing them isn't just listening to what he says. It's paying attention to how he says it. Because words aren't just for talking. They're tools. And when someone's hiding the truth, their words will always leave clues. The most dangerous kind of manipulation isn't the obvious kind. It's the kind that makes you feel uneasy. It gets into your mind, shifts how you see things, and makes you second-guess what your instincts already know. When a man cheats, he doesn't just lie about what he's doing. He starts changing the way you think about it. He wants you to question your own thoughts before you ever question his behavior. And if he can make you doubt yourself, he's already ahead. That's where emotional manipulation begins. It's not always loud. It's not always aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet. It's sneaky. It doesn't deny things outright. It just makes you feel like you're being too dramatic. You bring up something that's bothering you, maybe something that feels off, and instead of giving you a real answer, he gets offended. Why are you so paranoid? Or, you never used to act like this. Now the focus isn't on what he did. It's on you. Instead of talking about the issue, you're defending your emotions. And that's how the whole conversation changes. This is a classic deflection. It's one of the strongest tools in the hands of someone trying to cover their tracks. It shifts the blame from him to you. You're no longer looking at his actions. You're looking at your own reactions. And then it begins. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm being too emotional. Maybe I'm pushing him away. Once you start believing that, he doesn't have to lie anymore. You'll do all the hiding for him. But it doesn't stop there. Another favorite tactic? Gaslighting. We hear the term often, but at its core it means this, making you doubt your own truth. You remember clearly what happened, what he said, when he got home. But when you mention it, he says it never happened. Or worse, he blames you. You always take things the wrong way. Or, that's not what I said. It's not just lying. It's making you unsure of your own memories. And the more he does it, the more drained you feel. Because arguing about facts is tiring. Defending yourself, justifying your feelings, trying to prove you're not imagining things. It wears you down. So after a while, you just stop. You let things slide. You start telling yourself, maybe I am imagining it. You ignore the signs, not because you don't see them, but because dealing with them feels overwhelming. That's how manipulation wins, not with loud fights, but with slow exhaustion. And then comes the guilt. A skilled manipulator won't just protect himself. He'll turn things around and make you feel at fault. Maybe he tells you he's been stressed, that he feels unloved, that he needed a break. Maybe he even confesses to something small just to make you feel like it's your fault. I wouldn't have done this if things were better between us. Now, instead of demanding answers, you're saying sorry. Instead of confronting him, you're trying to fix things. And in doing that, you walk straight into his trap. And here's the toughest part. When you're caught in the middle of all this, you don't always realize it. You think these are just relationship ups and downs. You convince yourself that every couple has issues. You start to believe him. Maybe you are being too needy, too emotional, too unsure. But deep inside, you feel it in your gut. You sense the shift. You feel the gap growing between you. Even when everything seems fine, something doesn't feel right. And that feeling, that quiet, nagging sense that something's wrong, that's the part you need to trust. Because the truth is, A loving partner won't make you feel crazy for asking questions. A loyal man won't twist the facts to hide the truth. A real relationship is built on trust, not confusion, not fear, not guilt. And you deserve more than someone who plays with your mind just to protect his secrets. Manipulation has no place in a bond that's supposed to be built on mutual respect, truth, and emotional safety. If someone is trying to make you doubt yourself instead of making you feel secure, that's not love, it's control. And control is never the base of a healthy connection. There's a part of you, deep and instinctive, that senses when something is off, far before your logical mind understands what's going on. Before you can name it, before you can explain it, you feel it. That tight feeling in your chest, the strange discomfort, that little whisper inside that something isn't right. But many people ignore it. They push the feeling down. They convince themselves they're overthinking, being dramatic, or imagining things. Still, that feeling is your inner voice, your gut. That part of you sees the patterns and warning signs before your mind even fully notices them. And if you continue to ignore it, you might end up waking one day and realizing that it had been right the whole time. A man who's being unfaithful often doesn't get away with it because he's some kind of genius. He doesn't need to be extremely careful. He often gets away with it because the person he's lying to doesn't want to admit what she already suspects. She notices the coldness, the strange changes in his words, the defensive tone when she asks basic questions. But she tells herself it must mean something else. Accepting the truth would mean dealing with heartbreak. And sometimes, pretending everything is fine feels easier than facing reality. But that gut feeling, it's not random. It's not some wild guess. It's your system, picking up on all the little things your conscious mind hasn't fully recognized yet. The way his tone sounds different when you ask certain things. The way his routine starts to shift. The way he suddenly starts grooming himself more or acts annoyed by small things that never used to bother him. Our minds catch patterns even when we're not trying to. And when something doesn't sit right, your body reacts. Even if your heart refuses to face it, deep down, you feel it. That's why when people finally discover the truth, they say, "I knew it." Because somewhere inside, they did know. They just didn't believe in themselves enough to follow that feeling. That's the real risk, not just being lied to, but being trained to ignore your instincts. When you stop trusting what you feel, when you decide your inner voice is wrong, you give someone else the power to control your reality. And that's the most dangerous kind of control. Of course, intuition isn't flawless. It doesn't mean you should jump to conclusions or accuse without reason. It's not about assuming the worst in people. It's about noticing when something doesn't feel right, and giving yourself the space to explore that feeling. It's about watching how things unfold, noticing odd behavior, and trusting that if something doesn't feel okay, there's probably a reason. Because lying to yourself to feel safe only leads to greater hurt later on. This doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. It's about every part of life. The power to believe in your inner voice, to know when someone's not being real with you, to spot manipulation, that's an ability that protects you in all areas. People who ignore those feelings often find themselves in situations they never saw coming. But people who listen to that small but steady voice spot the red flags early. They hold their ground. They leave before too much damage is done. If something feels off, it probably is. If you keep wondering if someone is lying, if there's a growing gap between you and them you can't explain, if you catch yourself constantly defending someone else's questionable actions, those thoughts aren't random. That's your inner voice trying to keep you safe. The worst thing you can do is silence it. Boundaries aren't just rules. They're a form of self-respect. They say what you will and won't accept. They protect you from being played, from being hurt again and again, from staying in something where your needs are ignored. When a man is being unfaithful, one of the first things he does, often without realizing it, is test your boundaries. He sees how much he can get away with before you say something. Maybe he starts canceling plans more often and expects you to be cool with it. Maybe he keeps parts of his day to himself but still wants you to trust him. Maybe he becomes secretive with his phone and tells you it's no big deal when you point it out. These things seem small, easy to brush off. That's the trick. If everything changed all at once, you'd notice. But when the changes happen little by little, you might not even realize how much you've let slide. And when you finally speak up, when you question his behavior, that's when you find out what kind of person he really is. If he values you, he'll listen. He'll hear your worries, explain his side, and take responsibility if he's done something wrong. But if he's hiding something, or if he thinks he doesn't need to answer to you, he'll flip the script. He'll say you're being dramatic, that you're too emotional, that you're trying to control him. He'll make you feel bad for wanting simple respect. And this is where many people start to give in. They begin to think maybe they are asking for too much, that maybe they should just relax more. So they let things slide. And once a line is crossed once, it's easier for it to be crossed again, and again, because what you put up with, you teach someone is okay. Yes, relationships are built on trust. But trust isn't automatic. It's earned. It's built over time and must be looked after. When it's broken, it needs to be repaired. That's what it means to be accountable. But if someone always dismisses how you feel, if they brush off your concerns, if they constantly act like their needs come before the relationship, what you have is not trust. It's control. It's a setup where one person gets to act freely while the other is expected to stay quiet. And here's where it gets worse. When boundaries are ignored over and over, it's not just the relationship that suffers. It's you. You start to question yourself. You start to believe you're asking too much. That maybe you don't deserve better. That maybe this is just how love is. And that's how people stay stuck in painful, unhealthy situations for years. Because by the time they understand what's been happening, they've already accepted the idea that their needs don't count. But they do count. You count. Your emotions, your concerns, your right to feel secure in a relationship. Those are not up for debate. If someone keeps ignoring them, it's not love. It's not real partnership. It's someone wanting to be in control while avoiding the responsibility of real love. The only way to avoid this pattern is to set firm boundaries and stand by them. That means being ready to walk away if those limits aren't respected. That means refusing to be guilted into silence. That means knowing that any relationship where you have to fight just to be respected isn't one you should stay in. Because the person who really loves you won't see your boundaries as a threat. They'll understand them as a guide, a way to make the connection stronger, healthier, and more meaningful. What about you? Have you ever noticed signs like these in someone you were close to? Let's open up in the comments. And if this helped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're building a space where honesty, empowerment, and self-worth lead the way. Let me know what topics you'd like us to dive into next. I'll see you in the next video.